Hey folks, this is the Appalachia Roundup here. I'm starting a new regular series called the Appalachian Roundup, a research note. These will be short 3-minute videos. They'll focus on a piece of peer-reviewed research that's publicly available on something like Google Scholar, and I'll give a brief encapsulation of what the article's about and show the link, and if you want to read it, you can. I'll start right off with a piece that relates to a lot of the things we've been talking about. It's a piece from the Russell Sage Foundation Journal of the Social Sciences. It's called Coming of Age in Appalachia, Emerging or Expedited Adulthood. And the two Princeton University, it's Emily Miller and Catherine Eden. Okay, so what's the problem they're researching? The problem is coming of age, basically the transition from childhood to adulthood, and how growing up poor in Appalachia impacts this transition. Who do they go talk to? How do they access those people? What's their data, so to speak? They're primarily looking at poor, white, rural community in Appalachia in Clay County, eastern Kentucky. In-depth interviews with community leaders as well as people who are poor, connected up with those people through local organizations that serve needy. And they also did some ethnographic research, which is basically some field work combined with their interviews. What's the overall finding of the piece? Well, one part is something that I think everybody in Appalachia would understand, which is what they call the moral community. It shapes basically poor and more affluent and less affluent people in similar ways, in that you grow up in Appalachia, most people want to get married, most people want a job, most people want to have a house, a piece of property that they call their own, and those values, those wants, those desires are informed by the moral community that you live in. Okay, the main thrust of the argument, though, is that the transition from childhood to adulthood is really impacted along class lines. And basically, the pathway differs based on money and social standing in the community, which is class. And that class impacts the transition. Basically, they argue that kids who come from a family with more affluent and more education, the transition for kids in Appalachia from childhood to adulthood is typical for most Americans. However, if you are Clay County, eastern Kentucky, and you are a poor white kid growing up, then this transition is going to be different for you, or the likelihood of this transition is going to be very different for you. And what they found is that, or their research confirms, that poorer kids are more likely to be addicted to drugs. And this negatively impacts the transition to adulthood. Poorer kids are more likely to have a faster transition to adulthood, like the transition will be faster, particularly in terms of teen pregnancy and young marriage. And poor kids are more likely to be delayed in other transitions to adulthood, particularly they are going to more likely to graduate late or not graduate high school at all. Okay, they're more likely to live at home well past the age of 18. They're more likely to not find a job, or find a job that does not allow them economic independence. And poorer families, the result is poorer kids transitioning to adulthood, creating their own families. Those families, poorer families, under those circumstances, face increased strains, and those families are more likely to fall apart in divorce, domestic abuse, and drug addiction. Okay, so conclusion of the piece is that class matters in Appalachia.